Now it's time to listen to a researcher and visit the lane of beautiful and informative posters. I would like to invite Mrs. Aarti Rajendran and Mrs. Hemalatha Sasidharakurup from Amrita Mind Brain Center to chair the poster section.
Thank you, Mahima. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the very first session of ACCS8 poster presentation. Today, we will have some exciting poster presentation on cognition and psychology. After the poster session, all the participants are requested to be available on your individual Zoom link for question and answer session. Let us get started on time. Our first poster today is Personality Profiles of Troublesome People by Ms. Abeksha Srivastava from IIT Gandhinagar.
Hello everyone, I'm Abeksha Srivastava, a second-year PhD student at IIT Gandhinagar, and I did this study about personality profiles of troublesome people with my supervisor, Professor Frederick Coolidge. All of us must know someone who causes excessive trouble for others in personal and professional settings. Such people tend to exhibit personality disorder traits, relatively stable patterns of behavior with a genetic basis, generally onset early in life, causing significant distress to oneself and/or others. For this pilot study, 38 undergrad, grad, and postgrad IIT GM students from engineering, sciences, and social science disciplines completed an online psychological inventory for 1 to 2 people they identified as troublesome, like their friends or relatives. So we had 75 troublesome people. Cronbach had stated that alpha is higher when a scale has higher first factor concentration. Principal component analysis revealed that passive-aggressive scale had the lowest first component concentration. Hence, its lower internal reliability appears to be a function of a lack of high first factor concentration rather than actual lower internal reliability among items. Sadistics derive pleasure from cruelty towards others. Passive-aggressive people passively resist authority. Self-defeaters always choose the wrong person or situation, and narcissists are self-obsessed and power-hungry. These traits had the highest T-score means and sample prevalence, which seems reasonable, as they require interactions with people to express themselves, hence easy to detect. The normative mean of T-score is 50 with standard deviation 10. Therefore, a 65 means 1.5 standard deviation above the mean. Depressive, schizotypal, and obsessive-compulsive scales had the lowest T-score means and sample prevalence. Again, seems reasonable. Depressed people tend not to engage much with others. Loose thinkers are generally socially anxious, hence less likely to be identified as troublesome individually. Interestingly, people with obsessive-compulsive traits are obsessed with details, which college students might actually value. Table 2 substantiates the finding that personality disorder traits are more likely to be comorbid with other personality disorder traits. Antisocial and sadistic traits displayed a strong comorbidity. There seems to be a greater conceptual overlap. These traits might vary together because of a common heritable genotype. In one case, cruelty is used to attain benefit, and in the other, it is used to attain pleasure. Similarly, narcissistic and histrionic and avoidant and self-defeating traits are also highly comorbid. We also found preliminary evidence consistent with the literature for bullying behavior and the dark triad. Hence, people can identify a troublesome person, as the latter often exhibits identifiable personality disorder traits. We plan to increase our sample size and its heterogeneity to further substantiate these findings. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Abeksha. The next poster is Interaction between Enumeration and Perceptual Averaging over Different Presentation Duration by Mr. Sumit Parikh from University of Rajasthan.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sumit Parikh. Goal of our research is to study the interaction between enumeration and perceptual averaging over a varied presentation duration. Enumeration is a process of estimating the number of objects in a scene, while perceptual averaging is perceiving the average value of a scene. For example, we can categorize a forest without attending all the trees. According to previous studies, both processes share a common magnitude perception theory. They can also support this in their paper, Common Visual Metric for Approximate Number and Density. Having this in mind, we designed an experiment. In this experiment, participants responded to two kinds of tasks, the numerosity comparison task and the mean size estimation task. First, we adapted the participants to a fixed numerosity of 13 and a fixed average size of 50 pixel. After the adaptation, the test stimulus displayed. Test stimulus has either the numerosity value less than or greater than the reference value. Same for mean size estimation trial. Participant has to compare either the numerosity value or the mean size depending upon the trial type. Response was taken by the keyboard press. If participant think the value is less than the reference, then they have to press Z key, otherwise the M key. 22 subjects participated in the study. For the analysis part, we separated the numerosity and mean size trials. We plotted the numerosity trial where the apparent numerosity is greater than the reference and fitted it with the viable function. Then we calculated the point of subjective equality. For both number and size trials, it is very close to 1. ANOVA results for trial types are not significant. We concluded that it might be because of participants were given unrestricted time to respond. So we designed a second experiment. The second experiment is same as the first experiment, except the presentation duration. These are 68 millisecond, 500 millisecond, and 1 second for trial types. All the other variables are same as in experiment 1. We can see in the plot that the numerosity, the PSC values for numerosity are almost constant for all the 3 durations, showing an overestimated behavior. While in mean size estimation task, participants show an overestimated behavior for 68 millisecond, and for 500 millisecond, it's an underestimated behavior. Then it is recovering to 1. We got a significant ANOVA results for trial type. This study suggests that enumeration and perceptual averaging interact over presentation duration. But how these 2 processes interact is still a matter of further research. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sumit. The next presentation is recall errors for features in a single object increases with the intervening recall probe questions by Ms. Srishti Jain from University of Rajasthan.
Hello everyone, I'm Srishti and I will be presenting my work on the recall error for the features in a single object increases with intervening recall probe question. Recall is considered to be one of the major processes of memory along with storage and encoding. The memory is task dependent, so it is working memory, which is a temporary storage of information and it can be operated upon. And the information can be operated upon. Working memory is considered to be limited in capacity for the longest time. This limited capacity is supported by interference model, which states that when multiple to be remembered objects are presented in succession, the features of the newer objects interfere with the recall of the previous object. But what happens when there is only single object in consideration, having multiple features? So we considered only a circle having multiple features such as the color and the location. The location of the circle varied from 1.2 to 7.2 degrees in the visual angle from the center of the screen. And the questions asked were in the serial order, that is question 1 and question 2. Question 1 and question 2 can be about color, location. If both the questions are about color, it is a color repeat condition. If both the questions are about location, it's a location repeat condition. There was another where non-repeat condition in which it can be color at position 1 and location at position 2, and location at position 1 and color at position 2. The 4 conditions. So the participants had to respond on the response screen where they have to click on the screen. When location question is asked, a blank screen appears on the screen. The errors are calculated such that wherever the location of the circle was and wherever the participant clicked, the difference between the both was calculated. For the color question, a color wheel was presented and the difference was calculated from what the color of the circle was and where the participant clicked on the color wheel. A total of 400 trial was taken and the study took about 1 hour 20 minutes per participant. Total of 24 participants participated in the study and the results were obtained such that there was an increase in the recall error for both location and color features in both repeat and non-repeat conditions. We calculated the Z-score for the errors, the mean of the Z-scores for all the participants for both color and location features, and we plotted them against the serial order. So we see that when the question was asked at serial position 1, the errors were less as compared to the serial position 2 in both color and location questions. After that, we performed an N-way analysis from which we observed that there was a significant interaction between all the factors. That is, the feature of the object, the trial type, that is, it was in repeat or non-repeat condition, or the serial position, that is, it was present at question 1 or question 2. After that, we performed a repeated measures ANOVA from which we observed that there was a significant interaction, a main effect for the position of the question. That is, it was asked at question 1 or at question 2. So we see that the significance of the serial order was observed in the whole experiment. This cannot be explained by interference model because when the question was asked twice, even then the errors increases, which should not have happened. So that is why there are underlying reasons for this, which we are trying to figure out. And that is why we cannot say, even for a single object, the conventional capacity-based explanation lose their value with this experiment. So we are open for discussions and suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Srishti Jain. The next presentation is waist circumference and body fat percentage are the potential indicators of cognitive performance among postmenopausal women by Dr. Maninder Kaur from Punjab University.
Good afternoon, everyone. The title of my presentation is Waist circumference and body fat percentage are the potential indicator of the cognitive performance among postmenopausal women. In the present cross-sectional study, 207 rural postmenopausal women were taken on the basis of inclusion and exclusion criteria. And these 207 postmenopausal women, they were divided into two groups, that is early postmenopausal women and late postmenopausal women. Hindi version of mini mental state examination scale was taken to ascertain the cognitive function of the women. Then these anthropometric and body composition variables were taken after following the standard techniques. Analysis of the data revealed that in the current sample, the postmenopausal women with normal cognition exhibited greater waist circumference in comparison to women with lower cognitive score, whereas significantly higher hip circumference was noticed only among the early postmenopausal women with greater MMSE score. Results of the Carr-Pearson correlation coefficient of global cognitive score, they present positive association with waist circumference, waist hip ratio, body fat percentage, fat mass and fat mass index in the early postmenopausal women, whereas negative association was seen with the fat mass index. Whereas in late postmenopausal women, positive association was seen in the waist circumference, hip circumference, waist hip ratio, body fat percentage, fat mass and fat mass index. The variables that are significantly correlated with MMSE score, they are further used for the ROC analysis. This is ROC curve showing the accuracy of variable in predicting cognitive impairment among the early postmenopausal women. And this is the ROC curve showing the accuracy of variable in predicting cognitive impairment among late postmenopausal women. The results of the ROC curve indicated that waist circumference was the best indicator of lower cognitive score, while out of the various body composition variable, body fat percentage was recorded as the best indicator of poor cognitive performance in both the early and late postmenopausal women. And this finding is further supported by many previous studies. As far as the strength of the study is concerned, the result of the current study can be employed for counseling the midlife women. It provides better insight into the risk factor associated with the poor cognitive performance, and in the limitation, the use of DEXA scan to gauge obesity measures would have strengthened the results, and the study has not distinguished between visceral fat and subcutaneous fat. Thus, the results of the current study can be used to estimate the postmenopausal women vulnerable to cognitive deficits in later life so that timely intervention can be taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Maninder Kaur. After all the poster presentations, there will be a 30 minutes Q&A session. The links to ask questions to the individual poster presenters are available on our website. We request all the presenters to be online during the Q&A session. The next presentation is effects of early abstinence of cognitive functions in alcohol-dependent patients by Ms. Amol Kirat Kaur from All India Institute of Medical Science, New Delhi.
Warm wishes to all. The title of the research study is Effects of Early Abstinence on Cognitive Functions in Alcohol-Dependent Patients. The study was conducted at National Drug Dependence Treatment Center, AIIMS. For this study, 44 adult male inpatients who had been diagnosed with alcohol dependence as per ICD-10, who had completed a course of detoxification and had no withdrawal symptoms were recruited for the study. Assessment of withdrawal symptoms was done with the help of Clinical Institute Withdrawal Assessment for Alcohol Scale revised version. All those who had a score of less than 7 on CIVA-AR were recruited for this study. Neuropsychological assessment of the sample was done twice. First, after the completion of the course of alcohol detoxification, and second assessment after 1 week. In all, 7 cognitive functions were assessed, namely mental speed with the help of digit symbol substitution test, category fluency with the help of animal names test, working memory with the help of NBAC test verbal, response inhibition with the help of Stroop test, verbal learning and memory with the help of auditory verbal learning test, visual learning and memory, as well as visuospatial construction with the help of complex figure test. Dependent t-test for paired samples was used to analyze the results. At post assessment, that is after detox, significant recovery was seen in the cognitive functions of verbal learning, category fluency, mental speed, response inhibition, visuospatial construction, visual learning, and memory. However, no significant recovery at post-assessment was seen in the following cognitive functions, namely verbal memory and working memory. Hence, it can be concluded that some cognitive dysfunctions are transient and they recover in early abstinence even after 1 week of detoxification. However, certain cognitive functions like verbal memory and working memory did not show any improvement, and hence they may require a longer period of abstinence from alcohol to recover. In the end, it can be recommended that early interventions to target these cognitive functions will really help the patients in order to learn, retain, and apply various programs such as strategies for coping with craving, distress, and more constructive problem-solving approaches during the initial phase of abstinence, and also help in relapse prevention. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Amol Kirat Kaur. The next presentation is The Perception of Abstractness of Concepts by Ms. Hemalatha from International Institute of Information Technology, Hyderabad.
Hello, I'm Vanalata from IIIT Hyderabad. Professor Priyanka and my work studies the perception of abstractness of concepts. In elementary school, we were taught that words like apple are common nouns and words like democracy are abstract nouns. The classical definition of abstractness sees these two as binary and distinctly separable mechanisms. Abstract concepts are defined as concepts that are not directly perceivable through our 5 senses. Apple, red, ring, ring are concrete concepts. Democracy, truth, secularism are abstract concepts. Despite this being fairly straightforward, significant variation has been observed in the perception of abstract and concrete concepts. The other theory sees abstract and concrete as a spectrum, or at least a lot messier. The same mechanisms of representation underlie both concepts, but with different grounding. There are not many studies that directly take the ratings. Concepts have been studied qualitatively using recall tasks or aphasia studies. Our aim is to look at the variance in ratings and conduct a cross-cultural comparison of the perception of abstractness. Words were selected from 3 publicly available word lists. 80 concepts were selected based on familiarity, abstract and concrete words, grounding in visual, tactile, auditory modalities, internal state and emotion, and verbal association. The entire experiment was conducted online on Pavlovia. The words were presented randomly across 15 participants as audio files. Concepts were rated on familiarity and abstractness on 5-point Likert scales. We found that there was a significant difference in the mean ratings between abstract and concrete words, consistent with previous results. Also consistent with previous studies, there was a high variance between the two kinds of concepts. We saw that there was significant variation within each word group, and this implied a subjectivity in the perception of abstractness. There was more confusion for rating abstract words than concrete words. The average variance for concrete words was 0.663 and the average variance for abstract words was 1.675. The deviation and heterogeneity of ratings was observed to increase with the level of abstraction. Comparing abstractness ratings between ratings from the word list and an Indian population revealed a significant difference, suggesting a role of cultural differences in the perception of abstractness. Our findings question the classical definition. If it was robust enough, why is there so much variation? Understanding the mechanism involved is paramount to understanding how knowledge is represented. Binary or spectrum underlies a larger debate between an objective amodal system representation of concepts and the embodied theories, which emphasize subjective experience. A possible explanation for this variation that was observed is that we do not experience all objects in equal frequencies. Some parts of the world experience certain objects more frequently, like apples in Africa versus apples in Washington, which could influence the perception of abstraction based more on experience rather than actual perceptibility. That's it. Time for questions and comments.
Thank you, Ms. Vanilada. The next poster is Effect of Task-Induced Loading on Accuracy of Prospective Memory and Ongoing Task by Ms. Dasmin D'Souza from Kasturba Medical College, Bangalore.
Hello everyone, I'm Dasmin D'Souza from KMC Bangalore. The topic of my research is the effect of task-induced loading on accuracy of prospective memory and ongoing task. Prospective memory is the ability to implement a plan, intention, thought, or an action in the future. It has two components, the ongoing task and the embedded prospective memory task. Higher prospective memory load is said to result in poorer performance. Einstein supported this where he found better performance for 1 PM load condition compared to 4 PM load condition. PAM theory states that improved prospective memory accuracy comes with a cost on ongoing performance due to division in resource allocation, but some studies did not find this trend. Depending on the task, there are mixed results on prospective memory and ongoing accuracy with increasing complexity. Hence, it is important to assess the effect of prospective memory complexity on ongoing accuracy, PM accuracy, cost on ongoing accuracy, and performance index on young-aged adults. Accuracy here refers to the number of correct responses to that of total number of items presented. Cost refers to the deterioration of performance secondary to an additional cognitive demanding task. Performance index gives an overall estimate of PM performance along with ongoing performance. We involved 26 young-aged adults with greater than 26 score on MMSE. We included 2 tasks, letter judgment task and the number judgment task. To assess the effect of increasing PM complexities, 4 versions of the task were designed. In the first condition, participants had to perform only the ongoing task. In the second condition, participants had to perform first level of PM complexity along with ongoing task. In the third condition, another PM complexity was added. And in the fourth condition, 3 complexities were added. Both the tasks were embedded in Paradigm software and following parameters were analyzed. Results revealed that as PM complexity increases, PM accuracy decreased. PM accuracy was better in the letter judgment task compared to the number judgment task. However, letter judgment ongoing accuracy deteriorated, resulting in cost. This was due to the increasing resource allocation as the PM load increased. Letter judgment had better performance index compared to number judgment. To conclude, letter judgment is a sensitive task to detect PM load-related effect on ongoing and PM accuracy. However, number judgment task is a better predictor to determine cost of PM load on ongoing performance. Hence, PM assessments should include different task loading and should involve measures such as PM accuracy, ongoing accuracy, cost, and performance index. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lasmin. The next presenter is Nidhi Lanu Jacob from Kasturba Medical College, Bangalore, and her topic is Am I What I Believe? An attempt to explore metacognitive accuracy using absolute self-estimations.
Good afternoon. The topic of my presentation is Am I What I Believe? An attempt to explore metacognitive accuracy using absolute self-estimations. Metacognitive accuracy is how well one's subjective judgments about one's performance match the performance accuracy. It can be demonstrated as poor metacognitive accuracy or good metacognitive accuracy. It can be evaluated at the interpersonal level as well as the intrapersonal level. Metacognitive accuracy has been extensively evaluated in the literature using online measures as well as offline measures. Given the dearth of literature employing combined usage of online-offline measures and the potential detrimental consequences of poor metacognitive accuracy, it is absolutely critical to evaluate one's metacognitive accuracy. The present study aimed at determining metacognitive accuracy in young age adults using absolute self-estimations across online and offline measures. The objectives of the study were to derive various metacognitive accuracy profiles based on an estimation discrepancy measure on a variety of cognitive communicative tasks, explore the relationship between metacognitive accuracy and metacognitive beliefs, self-perceived necessity for metacognitive training among young age adults at an intrapersonal level. The study included 46 healthy young age adults. Online measure was an estimation discrepancy measure that was used to assess the domain-specific metacognitive accuracy on tasks from the cocktail as well as a cognitive communicative assessment battery. And offline measures included a forced choice question that was used to assess the domain-specific metacognitive beliefs, global metacognitive beliefs, and also the self-perceived necessity to attend training. For the online assessment measure, initially tasks were taken from the cognitive communicative assessment battery and cocktail were familiarized to the participants, following which practice trials were given for better understanding. Thereafter, a prediction question was asked wherein participants were asked to record their confidence in their performance for each level using a visual and log scale of 0 to 100. And predictions with confidence ratings greater than or equal to 80% on the given task were considered to compute the estimation discrepancy measure. And our offline metacognitive assessments were done using the forced choice questions as shown in the slide. Now, results and discussions based on the estimation discrepancy measure obtained, the participants were classified as overestimators, underestimators, or correct estimators. These are the results with respect to the domain-specific metacognitive belief, global metacognitive belief. Overestimating profiles could have been obtained due to the Dunning-Kruger effect, which speaks of general incompetence and ignorance that makes the participants overestimate their actual capabilities. Good performers have been shown to underestimate their performance, hence underestimating profiles could have been obtained. And people are equally prone to overestimate or underestimate their performance on easy or difficult tasks. Hence, a variation in the metacognitive accuracy across domains could have been obtained due to the unique qualities of the chosen task. Now, with respect to the self-perceived necessity for training, a large proportion of participants unaware of the training requirement is quite alarming. The outcomes of the study highlight that poor metacognitive accuracy profiles do exist at an intrapersonal level among young age adults, and a large proportion not willing to seek remedial measures is a concern for the aging population and should be a target for researchers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nidhi Lalu Jacob. The next presenter is Dr. Shakir Hussain Pare, Islamic University of Science and Technology, Kashmir. And the topic is turnover decision-making under risk, evaluating the mediating role of organizational justice and organizational commitment among the security personnel in Jammu and Kashmir.
Hello, good morning, respected experts and organizers. Myself, Dr. Shakir Hussain Pare from Islamic University of Science and Technology, located at Kashmir. Talking about Kashmir now, here it is -5 degrees Celsius and degree exposure surface covered with white snow. So I welcome you all to my postdoctoral presentation at 8th Annual Conference of Cognitive Sciences, ACCS8. And I welcome you in this particular presentation. So my topic is turnover decision making under risk. So the study is entitled as Turnover Decision-Making Under Risk, Evaluating the Mediating Role of Organizational Justice and Organizational Commitment Among the Security Personnel in Jammu and Kashmir. These turnover decisions are inherently risky because they involve significant consequences coupled with uncertainty regarding possibilities and outcomes. So that can be possibility of getting a new job, possibility of getting a new and equivalent job to previous job, and other intangible losses like the friendship he had acquired, he or she had acquired, and other goodwill things he had to sacrifice in quitting a particular job. So in this particular research, I have used two models for explaining turnover decision making under risk. The first model we are having, the model of Sitkin and Pabalo, who explains turnover decision making or the general decision making as a risky behavior and as an outcome of risk perception and risk propensity. Then the second framework here we are having of the Kahneman and Tversky, who explained decision making as an outcome of the framing effect. So the main thing here we are having that in this study we are using both the frameworks proposed by Sitkin and Pabalo and that proposed by Kahneman and Tversky. So in selecting this particular organization, that is the Security Personnel in Jammu and Kashmir, it is because the turnover in present organization is not only about leaving the organization, but joining the rebellious organizations along with weapon, raising an alarming threat of expertise to rebellious organizations, information to rebellious organizations and countries, and weapon to the rebellious organizations, increase in morale to rebellious organization, and the economic loss through recruitment and training of the security personnel who left the organization. So because of this thing, this study is important. Further, this study shall explain the general framework, general understanding why some employees having turnover to leave the organization, having the turnover intention, but they stay in the organization. And then some employees who are not having turnover intention, but they leave the organization. So this phenomenon will be also explored, this particular kind of study. So having identified the two broad approaches proposed by Sitkin and Pabalo and that proposed by Kahneman and Tversky, this conceptual framework shall be used for the present study. So it contains the different factors, different independent variables like individual differences, frames of reference, decision context, and social influences as independent variables, which are second order factors, and then they get mediated with turnover risk propensity, and finally the dependent variable, the turnover choice behavior. And we're having two mediators here, that is organizational justice and organizational commitment, and one moderator, that is personality type, in explaining the relation between turnover risk propensity and turnover choice behavior. So this study will answer these questions as mentioned here, and will also will work under these aims and objectives. And these will be the research hypothesis through which the research will be conducted. And this will be the methodology. As evident from this graphical representation, we are having a sequential exploratory mixed method in which we are having both quantitative and qualitative methods. And it starts first with qualitative method, and through qualitative method, we will develop an instrument, reliable instrument, valid instrument through Miles and Habermas framework. And that instrument shall be used in quantitative stage. And in quantitative stage, we will have experimental designs that will be evaluated through vignettes, scenario creation based on identification themes, and data will be collected through that instrument, which we have developed in the qualitative phase. And the collected data will be analyzed through mean, t-test, ANOVA, and mediation. And after that, the relevant data will be interpreted accordingly. So this will be the procedure for developing the scale as proposed by Churchill, 1979. This study will be having the different implications like managerial implication, security implications, social implications, economic implications, conceptual and academic implications, and theoretical implications. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shakir Hussain. The next poster is, are my cognitive abilities really as good as others? A study to explore metacognitive abilities by Ms. Aisha Roha from Kasturba Medical College, Mangalore.
Good morning, all. The title of my research is, are my cognitive abilities really as good as others? A study to explore metacognitive abilities. Metacognitive abilities, wherein one rates his or her cognitive performance relative to their peers, is known as comparative self-evaluations. These social comparisons are essential in determining if one is on track with their abilities and beneficial during social networking. However, little is known about the distribution of CSE for cognitive abilities. Thus, the aim of the study was to explore the comparative self-evaluations among young age adults. The objectives were to derive the CSE profiles and to compare these profiles across cognitive performance, everyday cognitive quality of life, cognitive strategy usage, and self-perceived necessity for metacognitive training. 50 healthy young age adults were included for the study. CSE was assessed using a forced-choice question. Cognitive performance was assessed using cocktail and cognitive assessment battery. Quality of life was assessed using everyday cognitive quality of life questionnaire. Cognitive strategy usage questionnaire was used to examine the strategies used in the domains of external strategy, internal strategy, and metacognitive strategy. The assessment of self-perceived necessity for metacognitive training was assessed using this forced-choice question. Based on the percentile ranking, participants in the first and the fourth quartile were categorized as high or low performers respectively, and as average performers if they performed within second and third quartile. Those with performance profiles matching with CSE were categorized as correct estimators. Lower or higher than their CSE were categorized as over or underestimators respectively. The trends here suggest that most of the young age adults either overestimated or underestimated their abilities in both cognitive domains, memory and executive function. These are the task-specific results for the 3 CSE profiles. The underestimating young age adults obtained significantly higher performance scores on cognitive tasks, followed by correct estimators and overestimators. This can be supported by the Dunning-Kruger effect. The skills needed to self-evaluate one's ability and to perform a cognitive task are same. Low performers lack the skill, thereby performing poorly on cognitive tasks, misestimating their abilities, resulting in an inflated estimation. Contrarily, high performers suffer from a false consensus effect, where they believe that others must have performed as well as they did, thus failing to recognize their superior performance at a social level. With respect to quality of life scores, the trends here suggest that overestimators obtain highest, followed by correct estimators and underestimators. However, conclusions could not be drawn because of statistical insignificance. With respect to cognitive strategy usage, these were the results obtained. Conclusions could not be drawn because of statistical insignificance. With respect to the need for metacognitive training, 40% of the overestimating and underestimating young age adults felt the need for training, while the rest were either unsure or denied. Again, conclusions could not be drawn because of statistical insignificance. To conclude, the trends are suggestive that most of the young age adults demonstrate inconsistent metacognitive awareness of their abilities relative to their peers.
Thank you, Ms. Aisha Roha. The next presentation is Cognitive Behavior in Teleost by Atifa Hasib Ansari from Eccleston College of University of Allahabad.
Good afternoon, everyone. I, Atifa Hasib Ansari, research scholar from Mrs. Khanna Girls Degree College, Prayagraj, would like to represent a poster presentation on the importance of cognitive skill in teleost. Teleost are the ray-fin fishes that belongs to the class Actinopterygii. They differ from other bony fishes in having movable premaxilla. They are the most advanced and developed form of the fishes, which are dominantly occur in both freshwater habitat as well as marine habitat. The brain portion of the fishes is divided into the forebrain, prosencephalon, the midbrain, mesencephalon, and the hindbrain, that is the rhombencephalon, which continues with the spinal cord. The prosencephalon is further subdivided into the telencephalon and the cerebral portion. The telencephalon is the peculiar part of the brain. It consists of the anterior pituitary, hypothalamus, and preoptic area, which is involved in cognition, learning, spatial memory, navigation, gonadal function, fertilization, reproduction, etc. It has been observed that neural architecture of the fishes is involved in cognitive learning. The preoptic area, that is the portion of the anterior hypothalamus, is involved in various physiological activities of the teleost, including the learning, memory, navigation, social behavior, etc. The preoptic area plays crucial role in motivation and reward pathway. The two genes that are EGR1 and CFOS, which express in the preoptic area of the hypothalamus, is involved in spatial cognition. The lateral part of the telencephalon is involved in the social cognition, and the neuropeptide, that is a galanin, which is present in the region of the brain, is responsible for the parental care as well as social behavior. It has been noted that among the teleost, galanin are expressed in the diencephalon portion, which involve the preoptic area during the nest formation. Immediate early gene that express in the brain region act as a neuronal marker for the spatial and motivation skills. Thus, we can say that teleost possesses a well-developed brain. It has been also reported that brain size and cognitive abilities of fishes are interconnected with each other. All this study indicates that the teleost possesses well-developed brain region that plays crucial role in motivation, parental care, nesting behavior, social behavior, courtship, and reward pathway. The teleost have the well-developed preoptic area and the hypothalamus, which is involved in the learning and skill, memory, etc. But the knowledge is less explored. Hence, we wish to work on the preoptic area in future. This is the reference where I have taken.
Thank you, Ms. Atifa. The next presenter is Dr. Nandini Jayachandran, Institute of Communicative and Cognitive Neuroscience, Trivandrum. The topic is Cultural Adaptation of MChat RF Malayalam version.
Good morning, delegates. Autism spectrum disorder is a neurodevelopmental condition which has an estimated prevalence of 15 in 10,000 in the 1 to 10 age group in India. And it is a well-known fact that the early the diagnosis, the better will be the chances for early intervention, which will lead to better prognosis. Here, the role of screening tools with adequate sensitivity as an effective method to identify cases from the community becomes very important. However, the majority of such screening tools have been developed in the English-speaking population and hence unsuitable for our use. Now, this work is part of a research project which has been funded by the Department of Science and Technology, where we have as one of our objectives ascertainment of the prevalence of AST in Trivandrum district. Our choice for translation of a screening tool was the modified checklist for autism in toddlers, revised with follow-up, which is a level 1 screener and a 2-stage parent report screening tool. So the objective is basically to translate this tool and to estimate its reliability and validity. Coming to the method part, the first stage is translation of the tool. After obtaining the necessary permissions from the authors, the WHO guidelines for translation has been followed. In part 2, which is estimation of reliability and validity of the tool, the sampling pool consisted of about 2013 cases who have been registered cases of a tertiary referral hospital in a 2-year period, that is from Jan 2017 to December 2018. Of these cases, 80 had a confirmed diagnosis of AST, and among this 80, the 33 children whose parents were willing to undergo further evaluations comprised the sample. Procedure. The Malayalam translated version of MChat was administered first, followed by the source version, which was in English, which was followed by administration of CAS. The re-administration was done about 2 to 3 weeks, that is an average of 17 days. statistical analysis was done with SPSS version 21. Coming to the results, in the total sample of 33, 31 was considered for final analysis, and the majority of them were males. 82% of these cases had a primary diagnosis of AST, and the rest had a secondary diagnosis. So, the test items of the translated version has adequate internal consistency as estimated by the Cronbach's alpha coefficient, which was 0.811 for the first and 0.82 for the second administration. Now, this value has high correspondence with the internal consistency of the source version, which is 0.79. The test matrix reliability of the tool is also found to be very high, which is 0.964. So this ensures that the scale shows consistency in measuring the constructed different time points. Criterion validity has been established by correlating this translated version with the CAS total score, which was 0.658 in first and 0.610 in the second administration. So to conclude, MChat RF Malayalam version is a reliable and valid tool for screening AST in the Malayalam speaking population. And this study has important public health implications in the sense that the tool can be made available to medical personnel, pediatricians, nursing personnel, etc. with appropriate training so that AST cases can be identified from the community as part of the routine well-being child consultations. Limitations of the study. The data is based on a prospective report from parents of cases registered in a tertiary referral center. So had the same study been done on newly diagnosed samples as soon as the initial diagnosis is made, it would have been better. Then the sample size is small, hence the same study can be replicated on larger samples from the same sampling pool. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nandini. The next presenter is Ms. Soumya Srivastava from IIIT Hyderabad. The topic is use of music and social media for social surrogacy during COVID-19 lockdowns in India.
Hello, I'm Soumya and I will be presenting our work titled Use of Music and Social Media for Social Surrogacy during COVID-19 lockdowns in India. Social surrogacy hypothesis suggests that in the absence of direct social contact, people tend to rely on substitutes to meet social needs. The 7 facets of social surrogacy are comforting company, understanding others, group identity, culture, shared experience, isolation, and reminiscence. Music and social media became very significant mediums for fulfilling social needs during COVID-19 lockdowns. Research from before the pandemic suggests that the most important facets of social surrogacy for music are comforting company, reminiscence, shared experience, and isolation. However, the role of music as a social surrogate during the pandemic has not been investigated. Social media was one of the very few ways for people to stay connected with the outside world during isolation. Hence, its role as a social surrogate and the implication for mental health outcomes, maladaptive and addictive behavior are important questions for exploration. In the current study, we aim to investigate which facets of social surrogacy are fulfilled by social media and music and compare the use of these mediums. Number 2, how usage of social media as a social surrogate differs in low and high addiction groups. We hypothesize that self-driven facets of social surrogacy like comforting company, reminiscence, and isolation are fulfilled more by music, while community-driven facets like shared experience, culture, and group identity are fulfilled more by social media. A total of 121 participants were recruited. The mean age was 25.5, standard deviation was 7, and there were 66 male participants. A 30-item social surrogacy questionnaire for music was adapted for social media and condensed to 7 items. And the Burgeon social media addiction scale was also administered. Cronbach's alpha was found to be significant for all the 7 facets. The most important facet for music were found to be comforting company, reminiscence, shared experience, and isolation. And for social media were understanding others, group identity, and shared experience. Wilcoxon side-rank test was conducted on each of the facets of social surrogacy for the 2 mediums to find if the difference was statistically significant. self-driven facets like comforting company, reminiscence, and isolation were fulfilled more by music than by social media, hence proving hypothesis 1 right. However, community-driven facets like shared experience and culture were also fulfilled more by music than by social media, hence proving hypothesis 2 wrong. One of the reasons for this could be that during the second wave of the pandemic, social media was bombarded with distressing information which was hard to escape, while music would have also acted as a coping mechanism. Participants were divided into two groups: low social media addiction group and high social media addiction group. A Man-Whitney U test was conducted on the score of each of the facets to assess addiction-based group difference. The difference was found to be significant for comforting company, shared experience, understanding others, reminiscence, and isolation. The facets of social surrogacy that are significant for higher addiction group are those that are self-driven or self-indulgent, like comforting company, reminiscence, and isolation, and not those that are community driven like culture and group identity. How this changes post the pandemic may constitute the object of future research. I would like to thank my co-author, Dr. Vinu Eluri, and you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Soumya. The next poster is The Roles of Trait Anxiety, Psychological Flexibility, and Coping Strategies on the Mental Health Impact of COVID-19 on College Students in India by Mr. Aditya Jain, IIIT Hyderabad.
I'm Aditya Jain from IIIT Hyderabad. The roles of trait anxiety, psychological flexibility, and coping strategies on the mental health impacts of COVID-19 on college students in India. The second wave had a tremendous impact on India. College was shut once again, leaving students to deal with a lot of problems. Our study examined the environment that was created due to COVID-19 for college students and how this environment impacted the mental health and cognitive abilities of these students. We also looked at certain individual factors and psychological mechanisms that influence this impact. We had three. One was psychological flexibility, which is the ability to adapt to various situational demands. One is the individual's coping strategy, and the last is trait anxiety, which is the individual's propensity to anxiety. The experiment was designed in this way. We had a bunch of demographic and environmental variables that tried to capture the situation that the student was going through during the second wave of the pandemic. We also had outcome health and cognitive variables, which were depression, anxiety, stress, state anxiety, sustained attention, and selective attention. We also had a bunch of predictors, which was psychological flexibility, coping strategies, trait anxiety, and the COVID-19 impact index, which was used using our own environmental variables. We had 254 college students recruited for the study via snowball sampling, social media, and college mailing lists. Coming to the results, 26.7% of the participants were once infected, and 73% had family members infected, out of which 1/5 of them had one of them pass away. On a scale of 1 to 5, the mean rating of academic stress was 4, and social isolation stress was 3.9, which is quite high among students. Coming to correlation analysis, strong relations were found between many of the COVID-19 environment variables and the outcome variables. Factors like health disorder, chores, fights at home, fear of contagion, and the infection actually reaching the house, academic and social stress, lack of sleep, etc., correlated positively with depression, stress, and anxiety. Similar strong relations are found between all the predictive variables and the outcome variables. High psychological flexibility correlated with lower scores of depression, while stress correlated with high depression and anxiety. These also correlated with the selective attention and sustained attention. Regression analysis was done to see how well the predictors could predict the outcome variables. In the end, all of them were predicted at around 60% accuracies. Mediation analysis was done to see if the predictors mediated the relation between COVID-19 impact index and the outcome variables. The trait anxiety was found to be the most significant mediating factor and always mediated an increase in all the outcome health variables. Psychological flexibility turned out to mediate a decrease in these variables, while avoidant coping mediated an increase with depression and anxiety. So in conclusion, the study showed the severe impact of COVID-19 on the students after the second wave ended. It identified various environmental factors and identified trait anxiety, flexibility, and coping strategies that help mitigate or exacerbate these impacts. Thank you.
The next presentation is by Karthika Nambiar from Vidyapeetham, Hyderabad. The topic is an exploration on the effects of bimodal stimuli on selective attention.
An exploration of the effects of bimodal stimuli on selective attention by Kritika Nambiar and Dr. Pranesh Bhargava, BITS Pilani, Hyderabad campus. Perceptual load theory indicates that perceptual processing involuntarily processes information to its capacity. While performing a task, there is a top-down identification of relevant and irrelevant information, and selective attention prioritizes task-relevant stimuli for processing. The allocation of the processing capacity depends on the load induced by the task. Selective attention has so far been largely studied using the visual domain task for a better understanding of selective attention and to be more inclusive of the factors that a task might comprise in a real-world scenario. This study aims to look at stimuli in the form of targets and distractors in both the auditory as well as the visual domain. So our questions are, does modality play a significant role in selective attention? Does congruency of the distractor have an effect on selective attention? The experiment was divided into two tasks, visual task as well as auditory task. This is a schematic representation of a trial in visual task. For each trial, participants were presented with the plus symbol, the fixation symbol, followed by a randomly selected color word, red, green, or blue, appearing for 500 milliseconds as the target. Simultaneous to the visual fixation symbol, an alerting auditory tone followed by a randomly selected audio stimulus from the pool of color, which was the congruent distractor, and non-color words, lid, mug, or pen, which were the incongruent distractors, were played. There were 18 unique pairs of target visual stimuli and distractor auditory stimuli. Each pair was presented 3 times, making the total trials to be 54. After the presentation of the target and the distractors, 3 on-screen buttons with the text R for red, B for blue, and G for green appeared on the screen. The task was to identify the color word presented visually on the screen by clicking the corresponding on-screen button using the mouse. The participants were asked to ignore any auditory stimuli they might hear while doing the task. Next trial was presented automatically after the mouse click on any of the 3 on-screen buttons. Similar procedure was carried out for auditory tasks, where the target stimuli were auditory and the visual stimuli were the distractors. Part 1 of the result, the auditory distractors were more interfering while performing the visual task, whereas the visual distractors did not interfere much with the auditory task. The accuracy scores were high in auditory task with visual distractions as compared to the visual task with auditory distractions. This indicates that the modality plays an important role while selectively attending to a particular target, and how auditory distractors, especially incongruent distractor to the target, cause more interference while performing a visual task. Part 2 of the result, the congruent distractors, the incongruent auditory distractors were more distracting, as the RT for the visual task was much longer compared to the auditory task. The RT for the congruent distractors in both modalities almost remained the same. This shows that the incongruent distractors to the target, irrespective of the modality, interfered with participants' selective attention and had an effect on their performance. Part 3 of the result, the participants reported higher load in visual task when compared when it was performed after the auditory task. According to the past studies, this should have eliminated the interference of both congruent and incongruent auditory distractions on the visual task. But the Pearson correlation results from the visual task load and RT showed a medium positive correlation and a medium negative correlation with accuracy. This implies that with the high load visual task as reported by the participant, the RT of the participants increased and there was a drop in accuracy rates. Even though the visual task was marked as a high load task, it was affected by the distractors as compared to the auditory task. The Pearson's correlation results show no significant effect of load on RT and accuracy on the auditory task. Thank you.
The next presentation is the effect of stress on abstract reasoning by Mr. Sanskar from IIIT Hyderabad.
Hello everyone. The topic for our poster is the effect of stress on abstract reasoning. Since COVID-19 has taken all over the world and many people are under lockdown, this causes a lot of stress among people. Under such circumstances, many students have to give many competitive exams like NEET, JEE, etc. Hence, we wanted to find out how the COVID-related stress has affected these problem-solving ability. So we investigated the situational distress, which is caused by the changing environment, and the transitive stress, which is caused by some task at hand on the abstract reasoning of the person. So we had a total 68 participants in our study, out of which 54 were male, 12 were female, one was others, and one were prefer not to say. Out of these, we had two groups. One was experimental group, which has 36 participants, and one was control group, which has 32 participants. We first had the consent form, which takes the consent of the participants to share their data and all the ethical terms. After that, we had the demographic survey, which talks about the demographic of the participant, and then we had a set of six questions of APM to take the base understanding level of the participants. After that, we had two MIST sets, basically for different groups. In one MIST, we had a time task for one group, the experimental group. The time MIST is set to induce stress, and the control MIST, which is untimed, so it doesn't induce stress. After those, we had a set of post tests to take out test the effect of, and this also consists of 6 APM questions. After that, there were 12 task questionnaires, which consists of depression, anxiety, and stress-related questions of the participants. And then we had feedback, which was optional. These both pre-test and post-test APM were counterbalanced to remove any confounding effects due to the imbalance in the set. These are the results of our study. So these are the box plots we plotted. We first performed the Shapiro-Wilk test on normality, and we found that our data was not normal. Hence, we performed Mann-Whitney test, which didn't give any significant difference between the two conditions. We found that the median score of both the pre and post tests were also 4, which we are seeing for both the conditions. So there was no difference between median scores, and there was no significant correlation between test scores and any of the task sub scores. So our current study failed to reject the null hypothesis against the stress conditions. One of the reasons can be that all the participants belong to the mathematical background, and they found that MIST to be very easy, and they had no stress induced due to MIST. The future work of this study can be to ask participants first that how much stress they are feeling after MIST. We can have different stress tasks other than MIST also, and we can perform this whole experiment in the lab. This whole experiment we performed in the online mode because due to COVID, but now since COVID is reducing, so we can perform this in the lab to remove all the confounding variables. This is the poster of our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanskar.
Study employed within subjects experimentals. Good morning to all the delegates present here today. Myself, Sai Chandana, and my co-presenter Nitya are the students of Masters in Neuropsychology from Christ Deemed to be University. The topic of our study is the effects of types of music on human attention. Coming to the background, in the previous literature, there are no sufficient number of studies that examines the effects of the type of music played on the attention level, and 3 of the attention networks using the ANT test in the Indian population specifically. So the aim of our study is to compare how the 3 conditions, such as no music, music disliked with lyrics, and music without lyrics, affect human attention. Coming to the research design, the study employed within subjects experimental research design, and the sample consisted of 21 participants within the age range of 18 to 30, and convenient sampling was used. Further, the Pebble Attention Network task was used to measure the 3 attention networks. And in the procedure, the test was conducted in 3 different conditions. The first involved no music, the second involved music that the participant disliked with lyrics, and the last involved music without lyrics. In order to adjust for the order, practice, and fatigue effects, counterbalancing was done. Coming to the description of the test, the Pebble Attention Network task was used where the participants were asked to press on either the right shift key or the left shift key based on the direction of the central arrow. The task measured the altering network by observing the changes in reaction time followed by a warning signal. Next, the orienting networks was assessed by analyzing the changes in the reaction time that occurs due to the cues that indicate the position of the target. Lastly, executive network was evaluated by requiring the participants to respond by pressing either of the shift keys based on the direction of the central arrow. Next, Nitya will continue.
So as expected, we did see a significant difference between the NM condition and the DL condition. We also found a difference between the DL condition and the MWL condition. However, we did not see a significant difference between the NM condition and the MWL condition. We also saw a statistically significant difference in the participants' reaction time across the 3 different conditions. However, post-hoc analysis showed no significant difference between the 3 conditions. Furthermore, we did not see a significant difference in the participants' alerting, orienting, and executive functioning. However, we did see a trend in the alerting and orienting networks, with the DL condition showing the least efficiency. The presence of a significant effect between the DL and the MWL conditions with respect to the number of errors made suggests that music without lyrics that the participants prefer could have played a role in their improved performance in the MWL condition. However, we could not account for the complex interaction between preference and lyrics because the lyrics could have contributed largely to the emotive components as well. The lack of significant effect between the NM and the MWL conditions does go against our hypothesis. However, here also we do see a trend where the MWL condition shows better performance with respect to the errors made, also with respect to the reaction time. However, the results of our study must be interpreted with caution due to the small sample size brought about by lack of time and resource. Attention drainage effect is one theory that can explain our findings, especially with respect to the results that we saw between the DL condition and the MWL condition. Our study did have a few limitations. Firstly, we could not control for the environmental factors like noise and setting. We could not account for each participant's circadian rhythms, general mood, appetite, energy level. Since the sample size was small, we could not generalize. The study does not give us a clear picture as to what factor, mainly preference or lyrics, that contributes more to the decreased performance in the DL condition. This is an area which future studies could focus on. Future research could add two more conditions, one condition of music that the participants like with lyrics and another condition of music that the participants dislike without lyrics, so that cross comparisons can be made between all the 5 conditions. This will help us understand more about the complex interaction between preference and any potential interference from lyrics that might arise in that situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitya. If there are any questions to the poster presenters, the links are available on the website www.amrita.edu/ACCS8. The program schedule, in this program schedule, there will be a Zoom link next to the individual poster titles. There you can join and ask questions for the next 30 minutes. All the presenters are requested to be online. Once again, thank you for all the wonderful presentations.